What's up, people? Sorry about that. I was too tired yesterday to do the Stepfather 2 or BVS, so I'm doing that today. So, what I'm going to do, I'm doing the Stepfather 2 tomorrow, and then we'll just do the remake Friday. So, why not? But today, we're doing Batman v Superman. The last, for me, at least, of the live action Batmans. And this one is very controversial because I'll admit, I vehemently defended this when this came out. I still mostly defend it, but there's one, like, there's little things like I would change. And some of them aren't necessarily things I don't like. I like them. It's just, I think maybe they should have just kept it a bit more simple, but I like a lot. I still love a lot of this movie. I still think Ben Affleck is still my favorite Batman, live action wise, anyway. To me, I get a lot of the killing thing, but let's be real. I'm gonna keep it real with you guys. Batman would kill, even inadvertently. I mean, some of the things he does to people, you're really gonna have me believe they wouldn't die because of it. No, and Ben Affleck, like just the look of him as Bruce and the way he plays him, like even like this damaged version of Bruce, and that's one of the reasons I think I prefer him over Pattinson is he may have been damaged, but he doesn't feel like emo Bruce like we got in the Batman. He still does the playboy thing well. He does it a little differently than let's say Christian Bale does. I really think he nails it. He looks like Bruce from the comics. The fact that we finally have a live action black and gray bat suit is incredible. I know some people want the live action white eyes. I just don't think it works. I think there are ways to like the armored suit later on, which I fucking love. That's how you do it. I think just in general, there's no need for it. Like even the Arkham games, he doesn't have white eyes, so I think there's you can make that work. I think not just the look, the way he plays the character and Bruce Wayne. And if I look at this film, it's just strictly a Batman movie. It really is. There are some things like Doomsday should have looked like Doomsday from the comics, not the ogre look. I personally still don't necessarily hate the look if you don't look at it as Doomsday, but there's a part of me that's like, you should have just did Doomsday. Just did him regular if you're gonna do him. I think this is easily Gal Gadot's best performance as Wonder Woman, in my opinion. Of her, this and Snyder Cut are like the only two times I've in the Wonder Woman movie, but really these two specifically because she feels like Wonder Woman from the comics. I think she's good in the first one, but the first one you have that origin aspect where she's still naive. So like in terms of established, it's this film and then I would say Snyder's Justice League because after that, 84, even Justice League, they just made her a joke. But definitely by 84. And I'm not gonna really do a whole too much of a preamble because y'all know the movie. Batman and Superman fight, things are manipulated by Lex Luthor, who I still like Eisenberg, but because he at least nailed the evil aspect of Lex. So that aspect, like, I still really like the scene where, he's talking to Clark. But the only thing I will agree, he should have just looked like Lex. He should have had the shave head. I think if he had looked like what he did in the Snyder Cut, I think a lot of more people would have probably been more welcoming to it. Instead of the hair and the scene with the fucking uh like the Jolly Rancher is weird. I will be honest. You didn't need that scene. I and the part of the things, like I said, I would cut. As much as I personally like the nightmare stuff, I just wouldn't have done it because bad Superman has just been done too many times. I think people are just kind of tired of it. And I understand the reasoning because he's not necessarily evil. It's Superman brainwashed by the anti-life equation, which, that's fine. But I think people are just kind of tired of bad Superman. They just want Superman to do Superman stuff. And I still think he does have those moments in this movie. But I think if you just didn't do the nightmare stuff or you introduced it slower, I think people would have embraced it more. But I still love that opening scene where it starts from Man of Steel. Oh man, Jeremy Irons as Alfred is fucking incredible. To me, he is my favorite Alfred because he is the closest to the comics. I actually really love his speeches. I thought this and he had some good lines at Snyder Cut, but obviously he was a little bit cut because it's Alfred. I mean, you can't have a lot of Alfred scenes. But the one thing I really love with Irons is how much he's really into the tech. Because a lot of people don't realize this. Alfred helps build the tech. You know, even in like Batman Begins, you do see a little bit of that. And that's why I think Irons is the closest, just because in the way his relationship is with Bruce, it's very much like there are moments. Obviously, he's gonna be down on him. Obviously, this is a different Batman, and I really love it. This is a Batman at his darkest point. If Batman lost somebody, that's how it would be. The only thing I don't love that it's Dick Grayson. It should have been fucking obviously Jason Todd. I think that's the only thing I would have changed, but whatever. Um, Also, Superman dying, I still think it's the execution. I still like. I still think it's a very well done death scene. The music that plays, I felt for Superman when he died, but I just think it was you probably didn't need to do it. I think, and I'll admit at the time I defended it, but I think the more obviously now this is the first time I've watched it in a while. I'll be honest, it's the first time in a little bit since I've sat down and watched it, and I definitely think you didn't necessarily need to do it. I think you could have easily had him survive. Maybe you get put in a coma, and so maybe you could still have it to where he's out for maybe a lot of the Justice League, but he shouldn't have died. I think it was a little soon. I still think the funeral scene's very well done. And that scene where Bruce slowly starts changing and kind of becomes more of the Batman we know. And probably one of my favorite Batman scenes is that scene with Lex in the end. The lighting, like the red lighting when he appears, the light from the branding from the brand item is fucking incredible. I mostly still like this movie. There's just little things. Amy Adams, I think if she had black hair, it maybe did a bit more. I like her reporter stuff. I think that aspect I really like about her because I'm sorry, I know a lot of people love Margot Kidder. I don't think she really holds up as Lois to me. Besides maybe in the first one, I think the problem I have with her, she just doesn't. I think to me the best live action Lois is Terry Hatcher, but I do think Amy Adams is probably the best live movie Lois. I think to me she doesn't have the sass as much in BVS compared to let's say Man of Steel, because I think Man of Steel you get much more of that Lois sass, which I fucking love Man of Steel. Also, I would have changed the opening. I didn't need the whole sequence where Superman arrived to save. You could have did that later in the movie. I think that's a scene you do later. I think that they should have opened with the scene with Batman. I think because to me that Batman scene where the cop is in the building looking around and you have bat shot of Batman appearing behind him and he turns around is awesome. That is like how you introduce Batman. That should have been the opening scene. I didn't need the whole Lois interviewing the terrorist guy. Watching them, I didn't mind it at the time, but when I watch it now, it does feel a little weird to open with that. I think you could have did that a little later in the movie. You could have had a point where Lois does go on this, and that's where it happens. But I still mostly like the scene where the wheelchair blows up. I get why, but I think you could have did something a little different that sets off Batman finally getting ready to fight because I think the way they did the scene, the whole lead line thing is a little convenient to that's why Superman couldn't. But you're telling me he couldn't still hear some ticking? You know what I mean? I think you could have executed that a little better. If I had a genuine criticism, that is it. I think that part. And also, Superman should have talked. I didn't really like that he didn't talk in that scene. I think that scene I've always felt like should have been dragged out a little bit, where Superman has a back and forth with the government. But I still think Cavill plays it great. And probably my favorite Superman suit. I love the BVS Superman suit. It just looks so good. The way it's lit, the cinematography of this film, and you kind of understand now that Larry Fong doesn't really work at Snyder anymore. You kind of can see now that the cinematography is heavily fucking fallen in Snyder films. You compare this film, or even like the Snyder cut, to like Army of the Dead or Rebel Moon. It's not even close in terms of cinematography. The cinematography is incredible, and it's all makes sense. It's Larry Fong who did a lot of the cinematography. And obviously, the way they did the Justice League, you could have still. I'm fine with how they did it, but I now understand a little bit of the criticism in that aspect. I will still defend the Martha scene. I think, granted, they executed it. I could say a little clunky, a little bit in terms of how they said it, because, and what I mean is they did in a way where it could be memed. I will say that. But I still like the scene. I love the actual final fight. Both final fights. The fight between Batman and Superman is great. I love like once that he sprays that kryptonite with the kryptonite grenade, you know. But and I actually one thing I really love with Ben's Batman is the whole voice changer. It makes sense. It's a more real. I actually think that's far more realistic kind of than what Nolan did. Because in my opinion, realistically, a Batman would do like have like some kind of voice changer. You know, it's fine in like a cartoon where you're not necessarily thinking about his voice, but in a movie doing the like you can't. That doesn't work. That Batman voice did not work. It makes sense to have like a voice change, and I think that worked. In realistic, I still think that's much more realistic. And the one thing I do like about this Batman too is a Batman in a world with a Superman. You know, that is a bit more little fantasy. You still have a little realistic elements. I love the Batmobile scene. Hot take, I prefer the Batmobile scene in this than the Batman. Sorry. Part of I just think the Batmobile looks better in this film. I don't love the Batmobile. I've never really liked the Batmobile design in the Batman. To me, it just looks like a fucking Fast and the Furious car. It's still a cool, I guess, car scene, but it's hard for me to look at it as a Batmobile scene. I'm not a big fan of the design. And I get some people try to defend it. Oh, it's Batman's first. No, I think Batman's first Batmobile you could still make it look better than that. You could still make it look like a Batmobile, not just a generic car. You know, that's part of the reason I think the Batmobile scene in this hits better, just because it looks like an actual Batmobile. Yeah, I will say the one thing I will give the Batman, that one I would probably say is better cinematography in terms of the way it's shot. I'll admit that chase scene's probably a little better, but aside from that, I think this is a better Batmobile scene. And I love the first moment they talk to each other. And that's where you get the "Do you bleed" line, you know. I overall still love this movie. I admit, I don't watch this all the time as much now because obviously I think Snyder's a shitty person, but I still can enjoy the movies. And I'm sorry, Ben Affleck is my definitive Batman in terms of live action. I love Keaton, and that's more of a nostalgia thing. I like Bale, but I think Bale, I've said it, I think specifically as Batman still does not age well to me. Especially having now I even rewatching the trilogy, I'm more fucking in that opinion now. It confirmed that opinion even more. I'm sorry. I just think the fight scenes and then watching Batfleck's fight scenes and just the way he carries himself as Batman versus Christian Bale. And I would say more the last film and maybe a little bit of Dark Knight too. I just think Batfleck just had more effect, you know. But I still overall love Christian Bale's. I still argue he has the better movies. It's, you know, but I still love BVS for the most part. There's little things I would change, but I mostly still like this film. I understand, though, to an extent why some people don't like this movie, but I still love it. I think some of the hate is a little exaggerated still. And in terms of, if you're a Batman fan, I don't understand how you can't like Batfleck. I don't know if it's just because you want to just hate this movie, so you don't want to give any kind of credit, because if you want a Batman that's close to the comics, literally Ben Affleck said, man, I don't know what to tell you. The way he carries himself as Bruce and Batman, I just don't know. Oh, he kills. Y'all still like he straight up murdered people. This Batman just didn't necessarily care if he died, but I mean, and this is a different Batman. Even then, he was still doing Batman shit, you know. And that warehouse scene, in my opinion, might be my favorite fucking comic book fight scene ever. That fight scene still to this day is still incredible. The way it's shot, the cinematography of it, when he does the rock bottom, and this will be the thumbnail for the video, when he like grabs that guy and like slams him on the fucking box, and then he lifts the box with the fucking grappling hook. That whole fight scene and the whole sequence where he's like punching two people out, kicked one guy in the knee, like, and you feel those hits, especially in the ones when he's punching somebody in the face. Like, you feel it. Like, you grab your face a little bit. And then the one, or when he breaks the guy's arm, and you feel that. Like, you feel every hit. That's one of the reasons I love it. I mean, Winter Soldier had some great fights, too. Don't be wrong. But this fight scene, I don't think I've seen any fight scene from a comic book film yet that's topped that, or is even close. because the way that I mean, Deadpool 3 had some good fights, but nah, I still think this scene still can't be topped. You know, and Wonder Woman's entrance obviously is still iconic to this day. The music in general for this film, like A Beautiful Lie is what the track's called, is very much beautiful. And I would probably say, in terms of the cinematography and the way it's shot, it's probably my favorite Wayne Wayne death, Wayne's murder, like the murder of the Waynes. I would probably say this is my favorite version of it. I think it's well done, probably more akin to the comics. Dude, I mean, I like the one that Begins was good. Begins one was good because it's actually because BVS is a more almost artsy style of it. You do get dialogue from the family, but you do get a bit more from the Nolan trilogy. So I don't blame people who still have that one as the number one. But I think just because of the music when the Beautiful Lie is playing while they die, I fucking love that track. I think the score all around for that film is great. I still think so. Yeah. So overall, I still like this movie. I'd probably give this movie. I gave it like a 9 out of 10. When I first saw it, I'm still kind of keeping it there. Little things here, but I would still solid 8. Yeah, I would give it a 9 out of 10. I think the Ultimate Edition is the only version to watch. I didn't hate the 2.5 hour theatrical cut, but the Ultimate Edition is like a whole different movie, and they should have just released it. I think if they had released that, it probably would have did a bit better. But anyways, next Tuesday, I'll try to do this on Tuesday. Will be Batman: Mask of the Phantasm. That'll be the next. We'll be kind of doing a little bit of the animated Batman movies next. So, tomorrow we'll be doing The Stepfather 2. I don't really have a lot to say about it. I've not seen it. I've not seen anything of that one. So I'm going to go in that one kind of blind. So I'll be watching that tomorrow. And yeah. So, but let's get into... I'm happy to at least talk about something good. Because I just... subscribe to Pin Down Podcast. Me, Cream, and Tyler uploaded our Dynamite review. And man... Dynamite makes me legit want to kill myself. I'm not going to lie. Like, in terms of, like, how bad the show is. It's fucking bad, bro. So I don't want to go into it on too much on that. I'm actually talking about something I like for once. That's why I'm happy to be making this video. So at least I'll be talking about something good. Since I just did a whole, almost 30 minutes shitting on this recent episode of Dynamite. So subscribe to Pin Down Podcast. The video just went up like an hour or two ago. So anyways, let's get into Batman v Superman. Probably the tagline for the video will be "Tell me, do you believe?" Just simple, keep it simple. I still love the trailer for this movie. The trailer for this movie is that first trailer is incredible. Anyway, so the movie opens up where we get initially you get like the funeral for the Waynes. You kind of get a quick little almost origin story. This is how you do it. It's quick. You show the Waynes get killed, which I thought was well done. Jeffrey Dean Morgan played Thomas, and Lauren Cohen played Martha. And I'm still salty that the Flash, because they clearly, Zack has even admitted that's why he casted them. Jeffrey Dean Morgan and Laura Cohen, they were supposed to be, if you've read Flashpoint, that they were gonna be the Thomas Wayne Batman, and Lauren and the Joker is Martha, because in this version of the world, Bruce gets killed, and that's what happens. That would have been cool to see, but nope. Anyway, and the film really opens up. It starts from Man of Steel, which I love this perspective. And there's videos out there where they've edited, like, obviously Man of Steel, but also the shots from this scene, like, all together. And it's well done. And it really shows you, because one thing this movie really shows you is, I really love how much they show you that Bruce is Batman, even outside the costume. Because I love other Batman movies, but I feel like sometimes, and I'm going to say it, I think the Nolan trilogy is a little guilty. I feel like Nolan trilogy more is guilty of this, is they don't show yeah, Bruce is the mask, but there's still moments when he's like not in the costume that he's Batman. Like he'll be Batman even out of the costume. Like there's made a couple episodes in the animated series where, let's say he's kid like Wayne Enterprises gets taken over and he has to take out bad guys. He'll do it as Bruce, and that's when he kind of shows you he's Batman even out of the suit. And I feel like this scene specifically, this whole scene, Metropolis sequence, he really shows you he's Batman out of the suit. When the fact that he's running towards, like when Wayne Enterprise building gets destroyed, and he runs towards the destruction, and he's helping people, helping kids, you know, and the look he gives Superman, because it's the part where he's about to basically before he kills off, he flies out into the building, and I still think it's a great opening. Lex's people find Kryptonite. That's kind of the next scene. And then we start with the I'm just gonna say the Africa sequence, which I don't necessarily hate, but I don't necessarily think it should have been the opening. I don't think you should have opened with this. I think the real opening should have been with Batman. I think you could have had that after the scene where he looks over, you jump to that, but the scene where the police pull out because the guys they're watching the game, but then they have to go to the scene. They find the slaves, the sex slaves, right? And you see the battering in the wall. And to me, that whole scene, that is how you fucking introduce Batman. It's very much, it's almost shot like a horror movie. Like the girls don't want to come out because the cops like about to let them out, and they don't want to come out because he say the demon's still here. The way the town treats Batman, that is how that. And as much as I don't like the Batman, the opening, I will say that is how you show the city fearing Batman. This whole opening, the cop goes and he finds the guy Brandon, and then you get the obviously that panning, it pans over and you see Batman just in the corner. It is fucking awesome. Like that is how you fucking introduce Batman. Like that's why sometimes when people like who hate on this movie to the point where they can't even give it, like you're telling me this is not a cool scene. I am sorry. This scene alone, I love the Nolan trilogy, but in terms of just pure Batman scenes, I think this movie's better. If we're going to strictly pure Batman scenes, I'm sorry, this is a better movie. Like, overall, I would agree that Nolan I think BVS is better than Dark Knight Rises. Sorry, I do. But Begins and Dark Knight, I definitely think are better than this movie as movies. But I am sorry. If I'm going to strictly just Batman scenes, this movie's better. I am sorry. That opening scene is so fucking cool. That is how you introduce Batman. And seeing that in the theater was pretty crazy. And then, he shoots and the Batman just kind of fucking crawls up like a fucking monster almost. The cop sees he's branded. Lois and Clark have a scene. And I will say this. I do think Henry Cavill and Amy Adams had decent chemistry. Not the best chemistry. The best, in a way, it's funny. The best Lois and Clark chemistry might be, for me, it might be Terry Hatcher and Dean Cain from Lois and Clark. I really think they had a nice little chemistry together. Don't be wrong. I think Henry and Amy have good chemistry, but I feel like they had more chemistry in Man of Steel than they really do in this movie. Then, yeah, they introduced Lex Luthor, which I'll admit, his introduction is kind of awkwardly executed. I think he should have been shaved already. I think if he had looked like what he did in the Snyder Cut, I really think people wouldn't have as much of a problem. And because in the Snyder Cut, he was confident. He didn't have the weird awkwardness, which I didn't think they needed to do. I honestly, unless you could say he was trying to do that as a front, but I didn't necessarily need that. Like, I think even as someone who likes this movie, I feel like I would have cut out the weird scenes, and I would have just had him be shaved. I think if he had a shaved head the entire time, because even in the end of this movie, because that's where he gets, because he goes to prison, he should have just been cut already. I think he looks so much better. Like I said, we all know the story. WB fucked up. They should have released the Ultimate Edition. I think if they had, I honestly think it would have done better. I don't know if it would have done $1 billion, but I think it would have done much better. Because I think it was already close to $1 billion. So I think Ultimate Edition might have pushed it the hump. And I will say, the more I do watch this, it does get better. I think it has that aspect about it where it does get better each rewatch. you have the guy who tags false god on the Superman statue. Um, I do love the scenes where Clark's just like calling his mom, you know. And I will say, it's weird. The pacing was better with the 3 hour cut. And I don't feel like you're just watching, because there's some movies that don't need, like Endgame. Endgame is like the perfect example of a movie that really didn't need to be 3 hours. They only made 3 hours just to, I honestly think just to make it feel epic, when you could have easily trimmed that film down like 2.5 hours, maybe. Sorry about the fucking sirens. Well, Bruce has a dream, and this is where we get a dream of like a monster bat, which I honestly think it's just a little Easter egg. That's like, oh, it looks like, man bat. Bruce gets invited to Lex's party along with Clark. They don't reveal it, but I've always suspected he knew Clark was Superman, and Batman was Bruce. Because even in the line, like jumping ahead, or they're at the dinner and they're both talking, and he comes up. He's like, Clark Kent meeting Bruce Wayne. Like that's a subtle hint that he basically knows they're Batman and Superman. And I love the little face off they have at the gala or event, whatever. And like I love the little humor. Like Bruce still does show off the playboyness, but that like I was also suspected too when he said freaks dressed like clowns that he probably knew Clark was Superman. That's the one thing too I love about this movie. It does play it straight, because this was at that time, man. I think one of the reasons I really liked this movie. This is when everything started going to like MCU mainly was just going to comic, like comedy. They were going that overly, everything needed to be a joke. It's one of the reasons I really love this movie. It's just how much it kind of played it straight. Same with the Snyder Cut. I'm kind of want more comic book films that just play it straight sometimes. Like the X-Men movies played it straight. With certain characters like Spider-Man, fine. And I'm not even saying you can't have moments of humor. There are moments of humor in this movie. But I just think not everything needs to be Guardians of the Galaxy. And I felt like even in like 2016, like fucking Civil War was that same year, and that movie was basically a fucking joke. And then, we're a year off from fucking I was gonna say Guardians 4, or Guardians kind of 2.5 with fucking Thor fucking 3. Like, come on, man. Like, at least this movie played it straight, but unfortunately WB got scared, and obviously we know what happened with Justice League. It became Justice League. But, and I'm not gonna go too into that either, but I just feel like this one thing I just watching this movie again, it played it straight. And I think now, honestly, it's one of those cases. I think if this movie came out now, I think it does better now. I think it easily could do much better now. Because I think we're in a world people are open to more serious comic book films again, I think it was just at that time, just everything needed to be jokey. It really was at that time. I feel like that was like, and it was at the time too, most people still liked the MCU, so they didn't necessarily see that tone as a problem. I saw a couple of people who I talked to at the time who had a problem with that tone, but a lot of people just didn't at that time. I think they do now. Eventually now is when, they went too joke. It's like, guys, I was saying this back in 2016, but y'all are acting like I was fucking crazy. Like I was alone on it, but now y'all are finally acknowledging it got too jokey. Like fucking, it seemed like people finally acknowledged it by like, honestly, after Endgame. Like that's when everyone kind of noticed it finally. But I'm like, guys, I said this back in like 2016. I think I even said it back in 2015 with Age of Ultron. So to just have a movie like this that just played it straight, I'm not against like comic book films being different. Like Deadpool was this year, right? In 2016, and that was the jokey one. But Batman and Superman, to me, largely, Superman is lighthearted to an extent, some versions of him, but I would argue he's not a comedy character though. And that one thing too, I've always loved about Cavill's Superman as Clark, he doesn't do the whole goofy thing. I'm gonna say it. I love the Reeve movies. I've rewatched them like a couple months ago, and I still think they're great. The first one mainly. Two, I don't love two that much. I think two ages of them kind of ages badly. You know, the throwing the S stuff, him giving up his powers. I don't really like that. I don't think Superman would actually do that, even for Lois. And it felt contrived because that wasn't even a thing in the comics. Superman could still be with Lois and it not be a problem. So, but the one thing I've never liked, I was okay with it as a kid, but as someone who grew up, got older, and got more into Superman as a character, I don't like bumbling Clark. I think I get some people like it, but for me, it does not age well. Clark's not a bumbling goof. I've one thing I've always liked about like the animated series. Clark was confident. You know, yeah, he does try to be a little bit different from Superman, but he's not a bumbling goof. Or if they try to do that, they do it in a way where he doesn't feel like it. I think they go too far on the opposite side in the Reeve films, where he's overly goofy. It's one of the reasons I like that Cavill played it, didn't do that. He felt like his Superman to me, his Clark Kent specifically, feels like Clark from the animated series. And that's the kind of Clark I want. And more from the comics, too. Because mostly in the comics, he wasn't like that. Maybe in like the 70s he was, and I guess you can defend it with the Reef movies in that sense, as that was just the time. But for me specifically, I'm just not into that. Even for the time, I just don't like that. I don't like Clark being that bumbling. I don't think you have to do that. I think you can still have him be still Clark and still intelligent. He doesn't have to be animated. That's my, yeah. I love how they do it in the animated series. Like Clark in that is, intelligent and he's still confident. I do make him a little nerdy, especially a little bit at the start, in season one of Superman the Animated Series, but it's still done not in over. They don't make him overly bumbling. Like I feel like some of the in some of the Reeve movies, especially the later ones, he's almost like tripping over himself and stuff, and I'm like, okay, this is just kind of cringy to watch. Like I don't, you know what? I'll say this. I think Reeve in the first one it wasn't bad. It was like two and on really. But anyways, so after that, we get I love the sequence where Superman's just saving it, like the scene where he's just carrying the boat. The shot of him saving the lady, and he's like in the sun. There's some really good shots in this in the music playing. The guy got his legs broken, who I think some people thought was gonna be Metallo. I remember a lot of people thought he was gonna be Metallo, which maybe he should have been. They probably should have just did Metallo or Bizarro or something like that instead of Doomsday. I'm fine with them doing Doomsday. It's just he should have looked like Doomsday. The more I try to defend it at the time, but obviously there's certain things that change. Doomsday could have just looked like Doomsday. You know what I mean? I don't really see why he couldn't. But so Wonder Woman, because you see her at the gala, steals Bruce's drive. That's getting the information. And then I'll just jump ahead a little bit where he gets it back from her, which I'll admit their scene together was great. It felt very Catwoman, and even I love the reference he does kind of reference Selena in this. So, Clark writes a story about the Batman. I still love Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White. One of the few times I'm okay with the race swap, partially because Perry White's a minor character. I've always felt like he was. He's not like a main character in Superman. He's not. I'm gonna keep it real. He's not necessarily vital. You could easily do a Superman thing with like movie at least without him. You can have him be there because he's only a character. You can be there once, but in the sequels, he doesn't necessarily have to be there. So Lois, does her own investigation about the bullet. Finding out that it's tied to LexCorp and all that, and talking to the general, who obviously you find out later is Martian Manhunter. Then I guess I'll just jump ahead. Bruce is getting the information from the drive, while the Senate's going to hold a hearing tomorrow about the guy's legs, and Superman kind of faces his victims, or whatever, supposed victims, right? Like the people affected by him. So this is where we get the nightmare scene, which I still think is very well shot. I love the fight scene. I love the nightmare look of Bruce. But in the Parademons look fucking dope. The shot of them you get, they look fucking demonic almost. I love the design, and I don't know. I think the Snyder Cut does try to bring it back a little bit, but I feel like they kind of, I hated that the Snyder could have to make up for what Justice League did. Justice League, you could clearly tell they tried to make the Parademons look less scary. Let's be real. The Parademons in this looked fucking crazy. And I wish they kind of stuck with. They try to somewhat give him back that design in Snyder Cut, but I think it's mostly fine. It's just I wish they were like, because the Daredemons in this were crazy. This the bit you see of them, And I think the scene I still like because I understand it's a different version of Superman, but I get why people are just kind of tired of evil Superman, just any version of it, and I think. Especially because let's say if they had continued this at the sequels, you would have had this, but then you also had The Boys, Invincible, like with Omni-Man. I think people just want Superman doing Superman stuff. I think just fundamentally, there's just a lot of people out there, and even me to myself to an extent, are kind of getting tired of the bad Superman. So, but I mean, obviously, I don't look at this the same way personally, but I understand people's gripes with that. They just want to see Superman do Superman stuff. And when he does do Superman stuff in this movie, it's fucking great. So I'm not necessarily complaining about the movie. It's just, I would have just not done it in the long run. I think it's a good idea. I still like what they were going with it, but I also understand I'm also in the camp of they probably, the more I think about it, they should have just maybe saved this down the road for a Justice League movie. This plot specifically. But I still think it's a cool scene. I remember seeing this like in the theater, like because I think the first trailer for it, we got to this part. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. And then Flash wakes him up. You talk about you have to find us and stuff like that. It's about finding the League basically. It's a flash forward. This was supposed to be a whole thing. Zack Snyder had this whole arc. The whole story's out there if you want to know. But I'm not going to go too into that here. But, I'll just jump to the Senate scene. Holly Hunter, who's the senator, basically finds out, like, obviously that Lex is kind of manufactured. KG Beast kills the lady he hired early on, the black lady he hired early on. And I think the whole scene, the Capitol scene, I don't mind it. I just wish it was longer. I did feel like it was a little rushed. I think I would have liked a little back and forth. Maybe like a 5-minute or so back and forth, or maybe a little bit longer than that. Back and forth between him and the politicians, I think would have been kind of cool. Because I think that's what I wanted to see. And the bomb and blowing up was still well done. I just think I would have dragged it a little bit out, But I'm not gonna lie. Some of the best shots of him in the suit are from this fucking scene. The whole sequence is just shot well. And that's the one thing I will give this movie. It is fucking shot great. And I will say this. It's not one of those movies that's just pretty either. Because there's just a lot of movies, especially around this time, that are just pretty. Last Jedi. That just look pretty. And so the bomb happens. Clark kind of goes hiding for a little bit, while obviously, I do like this part where the town's kind of switching up on Superman a little bit, but then he goes to a mountain and just kind of talks to his dad. This is where Bruce steals the kryptonite. Oh, I forgot to mention, I skipped over their first meeting, which I'll admit, Batman and Superman's first meeting was done well. The Bat is dead. Bury it. Consider this. I do love that both back and forth. And that's where we get the "tell me, do you bleed" line. You will. And then, that's where he steals the kryptonite, which, unfortunately, we didn't see this in the theatrical cut, but there's a shot of him. You don't see him stealing it, but you do see a shot of him, like, taking out a guy, like, he drops down and grabs him. I'm like, that would have been cool to see in the theater. I'm like, that's some Batman shit. Like, that is... So he takes the kryptonite, makes the, kryptonite grenades, and the kryptonite spear, and this is where we get the armor, and the back and forth between him and Alfred. I do love his interactions with Alfred in this movie. The turns good men cruel. And then this is where we also get the that speech from Batman about having to take him out. When he's like, I'm gonna have to destroy him. Like that paranoia. I really think Ben Affleck really acted his ass off in this movie with the way he plays it. And as much as I don't like the Flash, the one good scene is his speech in that movie. There's the 1% chance, you know. And he starts to. We see that really nice shot of him in the armored suit, and Lex kidnaps Martha Kent and Lois Lane. Lois Lane mainly just to call Clark over. He drops her, and then Clark, saves her. And then this is where you get the confrontation between him and Lex, which I will say I really do like. And he's like, now God bends to my will. I think if he just said it and he's shaved, it would have worked even more. But anyway. And you just don't have a lot of those weird scenes. Like the scene with the Jolly Rancher, yeah, we don't need that shit. And he basically says you have to kill the bat and I will save your mom. And and he can't find her because any kind of instant he finds her, she's dead, basically. There's a scene. Oh, I should have mentioned Batman watches a couple of clips where it shows the Justice League. Then Batman sends a picture, which the picture to Diana is the picture of her from basically the Wonder Woman movie. And it's essentially, it's a shot of her from the Wonder Woman movie that comes out a year later. And we get the fight. And this is a shot you see in the trailer, too. Bruce is looking up, you have the bat signal, and Superman's like flying, and then he slams down. I love it. A lot of people, I remember at the time, were complaining how long short the fight was. I'm like, if you watch Dark Knight Returns, Part 2, I think it's the second one where he fights Superman. That fight isn't that long. I think they're about the same length. Because realistically, a Batman Superman fight isn't going to really be that long. It's not. It's not. Not at all. It's not going to be that long at all. It would be shorter. It would be much shorter. So I'm actually okay with how long it was in the movie. And I thought it was nice and hearty. I actually liked that it wasn't dragged out. It gave more time to the final fight, but also the warehouse scene. That's how I saw it. It gave more time to the warehouse scene and the final fight. It didn't need to be long. It just didn't. It made sense. It was towards the end. I thought it was hard hitting. Obviously, initially, it's Superman's kind of throwing him around. The shot, he just flies through a fucking building. It's fucking crazy. And it makes sense why Batman obviously is tanking. He's in armor. So, and it's based off the armor. If you've seen the Dark Knight Returns, if you've read the Dark Knight Returns comic, there's a lot of the Batman in this. There's even a shot, which is later on, where he's like on a building and it looks like the shot of the cover, right? Of Dark Knight Returns. And in that, when he fights Superman, he's in this armored suit, which I'm going to be honest, I think the movie one looks better. Because I like the lights, and I think it's kind of shaped better. The armored suit is fucking awesome looking. It still looks good. I think that's the other thing when I watched this movie, and you kind of compare it to modern comic book movies, minus like Deadpool 3. A lot of the costumes look better. And this is from 8 years ago, back in 2016. They like put care into the comics. It just compared it now. Even the MCU, like as much as I don't like Civil War, even the comics the costumes in that movie, which came out the same year, look good. They still put a little bit of care into the costumes, and you just watch a lot of CBMs now. Maybe the Batman, even though I don't necessarily like the design, I still think they put work into that costume. So there's a couple I still think that have good costume design still mostly, but a lot of the mainstream ones just no. So like watching this one, it is a bit night and day. It's like crazy. So Batman basically has when he does the kryptonite, because he has a kryptonite grenade launcher essentially. And he's like, I love the men are, you're not brave. Men are brave. And then he like just jumps through him, and he's like, Superman has a little bit of a comeback. He's like throwing him through stuff, but then Bruce hits him again with another dose of the kryptonite bullets, and then he throws him down the thing, grapples him on some like pillars, and then throws him down. And then he says some fucked up shit. He's like shit. I will say, Bruce was shit talking Clark. Your parents have taught you know, about the like how what he taught about the world, and like just how like basically how a different lesson it hit like. And this is where you get the Martha scene. The way I get what it was conveying, but I can understand to an extent why I got memed, but I get it. It was to snap Bruce out of it, and it's a 2-second scene. I think it's better than fucking. If you, I don't know if everyone saw Transformers the last night. I don't think anyone has, because that movie didn't make any money. But there was a scene where Bumblebee and Optimus are fighting, and Optimus, and because he gets basically, I don't know if it's mind control, but he goes bad temporarily. And to snap him out of it, Bumblebee, I forgot what he says, but he says something. It's done so cringe. I'm like, guys, the Martha scene, I can understand they could have did it a little differently, I will agree, but I still think it hit. And it's a 2-second scene out of a 3-hour movie. Like, I'm sorry, come on. I very much, moment though when Batman goes, I do love the scene where he's like, he makes the promise to Bruce that Martha won't die. And he's like, he wants to save her. Like, he's almost desperate to. It's almost like saving his own mom, right? And then I love the little, back and forth he has with Alfred when they're on the Batplane, which I love the Batplane design in this. And like I said, I love the Batmobile design. It's like a mix of the Tumbler, but also like a regular Batmobile. I've always liked the mix. I like the idea of the Batmobile being a tank a little bit, but also I just prefer it looking like a Batmobile though, not just a like a car. Like how I don't know. Arkham Knight, I love that game. I hate the Batmobile design. The default Batmobile design is shit. It looks like a legit tank. I'm like, I like the mix. I'm okay with the Tumbler because it worked for the Nolan trilogy. But if you're gonna have it be a tank, I actually think how they did it in this movie and the Snyder Cut is how you do it. It's a tank, but it still like has that Batmobile design. Like it has the things on the fins on the back that look like obviously like a bat. The only thing I changed, it should be all black. I think it should have been all black. I think that's the only thing. It's a little too light. I think it's like gray, which is fine, but I prefer it be black. But that's fine. And man, here we go. We get, my opinion, my favorite fucking comic book fight scene of all time. This fight scene to this day ages well. The way this is pure Batman. You could tell whoever choreographed this clearly was a fan of the Arkham games, because that's what this was. There's even like people have edited like this whole scene, but like put like the Arkham like fucking health bars and shit. Like it's crazy out. Like, and I love like everything about it. One, I like that the guys all charge at Batman. It's not that retarded. Like it's not that lazy choreography that a lot of lazy choreographers do, where they like run at them one at a time. It's none of that shit. It's shit that makes sense. This is Batman. We're gonna all try to charge at him, and he doesn't just instantly there's some he takes them out instantly, but there's some he doesn't struggle, but they get some shots in on Batman. One of them stabs him, like he punches a guy in the face, but he still tries to come back, and they all like come at him. There's even a guy that tries to hold him down from the cape. It's a lot of stuff like that where I'm like, that's actually intelligent choreography. It's not this dumb shit. It's shit that makes sense. Because there's just some choreography where they'll do shit that just looks cool, which there's nothing wrong inherently with doing something that because it looks cool. But I think to an extent, unless it's a very out there world, I think largely it still needs to make sense. And I think they did that here. It doesn't feel like they just did it to be flashy. It's a lot of choreography that just makes fucking sense, you know? Oh, he takes out like their guns by like doing like he puts, I don't know if like an EMP it or something thing that disarms the guns, right? And the scene where he kicks the body into the guy who's trying to use the grenade, and he rocks bottoms a dude, and then he does the running, and then he like slams the guy on the box, uses the grapple hook, uses the box, hits the guy at the box. Because in the theatrical cut, when he hits the guy at the box, there's no blood on the wall, but you see a little bit of blood splatter. It's not crazy blood splatter. And then he's just like the sequence where he's like punches three guys at once is fucking crazy. And then the one guy like fucking scorpions almost, like when he punches him down into the floor. Like you feel, to me, a good fight scene like is when you feel the hits, man. It's like kind of in the way with horror, it's like the reverse in the same similar way, but a little bit more brutal. Where if you feel the kill a little bit, that's when you know it's good. And I think it's the same thing here. You know it's a good fight scene when you feel some of those fucking hits, man. Like, especially a lot of those face punches, I'm not gonna lie. It almost feels like you fucking feel them. And it's like the little sounds. It's not like, you know how some movies will sometimes put those generic stock sounds or stock punch, right? This is not that. A lot of these punches are like kind of unique. Um, so Batman saves Martha. KGB threatens to kill her, and he's like, "Believe it, I'll do it." And he's like, "I believe you." And then he like shoots because the guy there's another guy with him has like an M60 light machine gun. Shoots the tank, and then Batman covers it with his cape because his cape's like made of like Kevlar that can block fire. And he's like, "I'm a friend of your son's." See, I like that's how you do a little line, and then Bruce, Superman confronts Lex. This is where we get the Doomsday fight. I'll just kind of jump. I'm not going to go too into it. Like, Superman initially gets taken out by Doomsday. Superman tries to take the fight out of the city, which I like that they do show he learns. He's trying to take the fight out of the city because it's Zod. So I can understand that a little bit. That's why he doesn't look like Doomsday. But I would rather just, if you're going to do Doomsday, just have him look like Doomsday. Because I think the way Doomsday looks, if you did that live action, that'd be fucking badass. And I get people say they did the Death of Superman early, but if you did it, I think some people would have been more accepting of it if they did it with like a Doomsday that looks like Doomsday from the comics. I think, yeah, there's some points, yeah, he gets bonier later, like where he has spikes coming out and stuff. But I think I would have just went all out and just had him look like Doomsday from the comics, from the jump. Personally, if you're just gonna do them, I just think they should have did that. And then Wonder Woman she was about to leave, but then Diana decides to come to the fight. Superman, the government decides to, when Superman takes Doomsday into airspace, he decides to nuke them. It doesn't do anything though. Superman seemingly, he's not taken out. He's just kind of taken out for a second. Doomsday comes back. He's much more powerful, and that's where the line where the general's like, "We can't attack." And then that's where you get the chase, where Bruce leads Doomsday to Gotham. That's when we get the Trinity. I'm not going to lie. I still mark out when the Trinity show, when Wonder Woman's music hits, and they all come together for the first time. And he's like, "Is she with you? I thought she was with you." And then that music hits, And I know some people complain, like, "Oh, why wasn't Batman doing much in the third act?" I'm like, it makes sense. Like, Batman... Of course, Willie wouldn't. These are, even in like the animated series, if he's dealing with characters like villains that are out of his thing, he let Diana and Superman or more of the other superpowered heroes deal with it. Kind of makes sense. I always saw it as he's kind of strategizing in the background, and if anything, he's the one who delivers that final hit with the kryptonite, the last kryptonite grenade before Superman hits him with the spear, which Lois finds, which I will say, the only things I don't like the constant cutting away. It didn't bother me watching it initially, but when you watch it later, it doesn't hold up. The constant cutting away to Lois, I didn't need it. I get they're trying to have her find the spear, but I just didn't need it. I think you could have did a lot of this off screen. You know, I wanted to see most of the fight, but I think they do so to the fight. That shot of Superman shooting the heat vision, and so does Doomsday looks fucking awesome though. That scene still looks good compared to like some of besides Deadpool 3, some of these like more recent MCU and even some of the DC ones like The Flash, like some of the later DC movies, some of the effects, it's not even close. The effects in this movie hold up far better than a lot of the later DCU movies and the Flash, you know, and the MCU movies. Obviously, that besides Deadpool 3 and maybe Spider Man, Far From Home. No Way Home. I think No Way Home had some pretty decent special effects largely. But that's just because there's not some crazy effects though in Spider Man No Way Home. The more I think about it, besides some of the more like the Doctor Strange stuff. Outside of that, I think it's largely, especially in the start of it, it's still mostly street level, mostly. And even in the third act, until like maybe Doctor Strange gets involved, it's not a lot of crazy effects. But like, yeah, Ant-Man 3, fucking fucking Thor 4, like, yeah, look at the effects in those movies. Like, this movie looks better than a lot of those. So Superman finds the spear, and he ends up low. You get Wonder Woman has some nice moments too in the fight, which I like. I love the shot where Doomsday hits her, and she likes kind of liking it because this is the first time her getting involved in a fight in a long time, and I still think it's a perfect introduction of her, and she's awesome. And I just wish we got this Wonder Woman more. We got her a little bit in the Snyder Cut, but the Snyder Cut was too late because unfortunately that was after 84, technically, because 84 was 2020. And man, that movie, I really think in the long run damaged Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman. Because after that, I feel like up until then, like this movie, even like obviously the first Wonder Woman movie, even before, like even post Justice League, which I thought did a lot of damage to her, but she was still using the sword and stuff, and she was awesome in the Snyder Cut, but unfortunately it was just too late because Wishmaster 84 did a lot of damage because a lot of people after that just didn't. They started kind of seeing her as a bad actress because I didn't really feel like before that I saw a lot of that Gal Gadot's a bad Wonder Woman or she's a bad actress because I don't think she was at the start. It's just that movie really damaged her. And now, unfortunately, that's how people see her now. Now a lot of people see her as like a bad Wonder Woman. And it's hard not to defend her because, yeah, that movie. And it's not, I don't necessarily think it's her fault. I more blame Patty Jenkins for this tone switch. So, Superman, makes the sacrifice, which I will admit, I still think it's awesomely executed. I don't think they should have did it, though. Maybe he doesn't die, but he should have just put in a coma or something. And maybe you think he died, but he shouldn't have died. Like, I think, especially because we knew he was going to come back anyways. He should have just been put in a coma. Because we knew, because the plan was he was going to come back and he was going to be in the black suit. That was always going to be the plan. Like in The Death of Superman. I just wish if it was Doomsday that looked like Doomsday and maybe they didn't fully pull the trigger on him dying and did a whole funeral, which I think the funeral scene's still very well done. But I do think maybe should have did that. Maybe they faked it. If they had faked it, but they all know he's actually still alive. There's a line where maybe the Martha, Kent, and Lois, they are the ones that only know he's actually still alive. That's what should have been. That's what I would have done. But I do love that scene of, I should have mentioned it earlier, but the scene where Superman's in the mountains and he's talking to his dad. I do love that. I love that sequence. It was a nice way to get Kevin Costner into the movie. One thing I wish there was a way they never try to get Russell Crowe back. I really wish they'd try to get Russell Crowe back for at least this movie. I think if he had a scene with him and Jonathan, I think that would have been awesome. But overall, I love this movie. I know a lot of people don't like it. I don't blame them, but for some of the interesting takes. I don't think personally the takes are that departure because they were clearly setting up Superman later on. And I'm sorry, Ben Affleck to me is Batman. That scene at the funeral where he's like, "We gonna fight," and that he's changed. He's like, when one of them's like, humanity can't come together, and he's like, "We can," and it's like he really can see the change. And I love the scene with him and Lex in the end, and you see Steppenwolf, which obviously that's setting up Justice League, and I really do love Bruce Ben Affleck as Bruce in this and Batman. I just think to have a Batman that's so close to the comics, but man, it sucks he never got a solo film. Because if he got a solo film, I really think that would have been the best Batman film of all time. I honestly, genuinely think that. The way he played the character in this tells me that. So, it is what it is, Hated how everything turned out. We all know the story of that, but I love this movie still. I especially as a Batman movie, I think it's great. Certain little things I would have changed, but I'm mostly still like it. Zack's a fuck, but I can still like this movie. So this and Man of Steel, and even Zack Snyder's Justice League, or Justice League, assuming that is a Justice League movie, I think can easily be a decent trilogy, especially for Batman. So, anyways, guys, tomorrow I'm gonna be doing The Stepfather 2. Hopefully it holds up. Terry Quinn's back in this one. I know there's a third one, but he's not back in it, so I'm not gonna watch it. So I'm just gonna do the remake after. But hopefully 2 is good. I'm hoping so. So I don't know anything about it. I'm kind of going in blind into that tomorrow. So yeah, and then Friday we're doing the remake. So. And then I'll see if we can maybe find another Screen Rant article, especially like right before Halloween. We'll see, but I don't know. But other than that, guys, I'm gonna call it here. Subscribe to Pin Down Podcast. We just uploaded our roasting of Dynamite this week. It's funny as fuck. We go the fuck off on it. So, anyways, guys, I am gonna call it here. Talk to y'all later. Subscribe to Pin Down Podcast. I like this movie. Batfleck forever, man. I fucking sucks how he turned out. Talk to y'all later.